Welcome to another episode on the Lab platform where our goal is simple. We advance liberation one conversation at a time. My guest is none other than Dr. Tank, and we're going to be talking about his work with the formerly incarcerated and what liberation means in that space. I'm excited, and we'll see you on the next side. Yo,
What's going on, bro?
what's going on, my brother?
Doing well, man. Can't complain.
Awesome. Why don't you tell the people who you are, what you do, and why you do it?
All right, my name is Dr. T.A.N.K. My government is Dr. Emmanuel Cherilien, just in case you're wondering. T.A.N.K can't be his real name. No, that's my street name that I turned into an acronym: Teaching, Advocacy, Necessary Knowledge, and do this work. I run an organization called T.A.N.K EdDucates LLC. We're focused on dismantling the school to prison pipeline. Do a lot of work in the front end of school to prison pipeline as well as the back end. So the front end, I work a lot with school leaders, professional development, really looking at the curriculum, textbooks being used, pictures on the wall, teaching hiring practices to see how we can become more culturally relevant. Then I am also on the back end of the school to prison pipeline. When someone actually gets caught up in the system, I am involved. I have two contracts with the state of New Jersey, one with juvenile, where I'm actually working with the juvenile detention centers, as well as the ISP program, where someone's released from prison and they're on parole. They spend time with me for 8 weeks before they are released and integrated into society. So I deal with the adult as well as the youth population, which ties into the whole school to prison pipeline.
Now, for those who may not know, and you're talking about school to prison pipeline, can you tell people like a little bit more about what that is and how it affects your work?
Yeah, so I think when you think of the school to prison pipeline, you're really thinking about how students of color are disproportionately suspended and expelled. And when you are pushed out of school, you tend to funnel and get caught up in the system. So when we talk about the school to prison pipeline, it's talking about how we're disproportionately pushed out of schools. And we know through statistics when we're pushed out of school, what tends to happen is you get caught up in the criminal justice system. So we're trying to dismantle that. We're trying to come up with different ways to engage our students, so pushing them out of school is not the answer. And so that's where the bulk of our work is, and that's what we're trying to dismantle right now.
Yeah, man, I think often, in my work with educators as well, I see their understandings of the school to prison pipeline as this event that happens at the end of things. And what they don't see is all the pieces that lined up to build up to this event that they finally do have sight to see. For example, punitive systems.
There we go.
Right. And I know, you talk a lot about this on your platform and in the work you do. If an educator is new to hearing about the school to prison pipeline, or if they just don't see it until it finally manifests, what would you cue them into to say, like, no, this is where it's happening, and it's already happening probably where you are?
Yeah, I actually would take them another way.
Okay.
I would show them an analogy with the war on drugs. And if you think about the war on drugs, when it was crack and it was happening in our communities, it was a zero tolerance policy. And that really introduced mass incarceration. It was at the highest point there when we were just locking anybody up. Now we move it to 2022. And now the drug epidemic is heroin. And it doesn't tend to look like us. The zero tolerance policy went away. Now we're talking about their victims. We're trying to figure out how we can engage them and create programs and help them And that's the mentality that we're trying to shift now to the school space. When you look at the inner city, we tend to have this zero policy with students of color. And we
Yeah.
throw the book at them when everything goes wrong, but we don't see that with their peers. And so, what I'm challenging schools to do is to look at them as victims, same terminology, and how
Mm.
we build programming to kind of help these students better engage them into the learning environment instead of pushing them and alienating them away.
I I obviously wholeheartedly agree with that. I
Mhm,
can hear certain educators in my experience say, "You're
mhm,
using the language of victim, but you don't
mhm,
see the terror that that kid is in my class. You don't
mhm.
see all that I have to deal with, but you're using the language of victim, and I'm the one being affected." What do you say
Hmm.
to an educator whose thought process is there?
So for me, I think our job is to engage the students in front of us.
Yeah.
If you're telling me a student's acting up, being difficult, there's something going on there. And we have to, as educators, discover where the disconnect is.
Yeah.
I personally always feel the disconnect is culturally. I
Mhm.
think I don't see school can be applicable to my personal life, I check out. And so I would, right there, I would look at teaching practices, I would look at curriculum, I would look at what we're learning to see what it is. And then there's sometimes I can say the problem's not school, the problem is home, right? And so I can't discount that some of these kids are going through some difficult times. Learns me to an example. I had this student in my class that constantly came in late.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro, I told the student, this is in Camden, New Jersey. I told the student, if you're late again, don't even bother showing up to my class because you're disrespecting my time. Because in my estimation, I'm thinking I'm trying to teach, I got the kids engaged, and then you come strolling into class, you don't care. One day the student comes in, I think it was midterms, we're taking an exam, the student walks in like 45 minutes late. And I'm like, no, you're not taking the exam. You can walk back out. I'll talk to you after class. That student's parent, father, was murdered that day. But because I'm so caught up in what I'm trying to do as a teacher and what I'm trying to do, I don't even think outside of what these kids are going through. And so that day has always taught me that before I make assumptions, prejudgments, decide the kid's bad, he's dysfunctional, I need to do more work on the background, find out what's going on, whether in the school space or at home, so I can become a better educator and connect. That was a great moment for me to be able to connect with the kid, given the fact that my father was murdered as well. And I lost that teachable moment because I was so caught up in this act of teaching and pedagogy. So that would be my answer to the teacher. We have to, just like a doctor, if you feel a pain, we work until we find out the symptoms and the root cause. We don't just say, this is what it is, and we label and diagnose. We have to go deeper. And I think we have to do a better job as educators to go deeper to find the disconnect.
So key. It made me flashback to my sixth
Mm,
grade year.
mm,
And when I was in sixth grade, um, I was in the honors program, and I was like one or two black students in this program, right?
mm.
And, you know, we could talk about the disproportionate or at least lack of representation in honors programs at another
Yes.
time. But I was there.
Uh-huh.
And while I was there, um, my mom was going through a divorce.
Mm,
And so I was this, pretty happy, got along with everybody kid. And now I am angry.
yeah.
And now I don't know where to place my anger, how to process my anger. I don't know how to do any of that. And so I'm in class and I seem disconnected. I
Mm,
seem disengaged.
mm,
And as I go through the entire year, right, I'm getting B's and C's, not
yeah.
necessarily anything crazy, right? But I'm getting B's and C's in this honors program.
Mm,
And I get to fourth marking period and I'm like, I better pick it up. Right.
yeah.
Cause I don't want to lose this. I want to, stay in this program or whatever. And so I
Mhm.
grin and bear it, do what I gotta do, and I get A's and B's.
Nice.
On the fourth marking period notes, this is back when teachers used to write on your report card.
Yeah, I remember those days.
She wrote that she is recommending me for the general ed population, and that I do not
Mm.
belong
Oh,
in honors.
wow.
I've never forgotten those words.
Mm-mm.
It affected so much of my academic career up until college, where I was kind of just apathetic because it
Mhm.
was almost like, well, that's where I belong. 'Cause that's what you told me, right?
Mm-mm-mm.
And never once during that year did she ask me why. Why are you feeling this way? Well, I noticed these things, and
Mhm.
now I just don't know. Can you help me understand? Nobody asked me anything. They just expected me to perform.
Bro,
And
you're hitting on something that is so key. Um, I usually ask people, who's your best teacher? Like, give me the best teacher you ever had. And I promise you, Bobby, no one ever tells me the person that administered the curriculum the best. It's always that teacher that made me feel like they cared about me outside the classroom.
mm,
Because once you can get us to believe as students that you are personally invested in our success, bro, the classroom opens up.
mm,
Everyone's willing to learn at that point. And I think we keep thinking that teaching is just making sure that they get this information. And we lose moments like yours, and we lose moments like mine as well, you know. And you remind me of my grades when my dad was murdered. I was an A and B student, and I became a D and F student. And I
mm,
don't think no one asked me why.
mm.
But that question could have helped me along. Like, oh man, you care. Let me kind of let you into my world, but no one cares. So, yes, we're losing a big thing if you think teaching, and not to go too spiritual with it, that teaching is not a ministry.
Absolutely.
It's a heart thing, man. It's not just a mind thing. It's a heart and mind thing. So, yeah, man. To me, once you connect with the students, sky's the limit at that point.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think that there are some educators who believe that their job description is just the transmission of the curriculum, right?
Yeah.
And it's like what Paulo Freire talks about when he talks about the banking model in how education works, right? So you will come into my classroom empty, and I am making deposits on the daily
Mm,
into who you are and what you do, because you didn't bring anything with you. I got to give you everything.
bruh. Yeah. So that's classic direct instruction.
Yeah.
Classic, really a deficit perspective that these students are not coming in with assets to bring to the classroom. And my thing is, I try to make it a very democratic process. So I tell them, if you
Mm,
think I'm this dictator that stands up and tells you the information you have to, no, there's something that you experience, John and Sue, that I never experienced. And if you contribute this to the conversation, it makes it more rich and robust. If we just hear me and my perspective, I don't learn. So a true learning environment, the teacher should walk out learning too. Everyone should be learning in this space. And so I try to make it a very democratic process where everyone feels safe, psychologically safe to contribute, give your thought process. And then I think it becomes way more engaging when the information is being taught by the peers as well as the person that's standing in front of
yeah. And it also assumes, right? Like
them.
there also embedded in that is the belief that I am not the only expert in the room, that there's expertise in my class that I need to pull from, that I need to, it's why I frame everything through liberation, because the belief for me is I'm not coming to save in the sense of I have everything and you have nothing. I'm coming to help you see the genius that exists already, and I'm just opening the door. Go get them.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, man.
See,
So,
a great teacher. Go
please.
ahead. No,
No,
no, I
I
was
mean,
going
I was just going to cue it up for you. I was going to say, like,
no, no.
how do we
I,
train teachers to do that? What do they need to be thinking through in order to shift? And then please say what you were going to say.
yeah, so I usually when I called in for professional development and talk about pedagogy. That's one of the things I say. This statement right here: a great teacher teaches you where to look, but doesn't tell you what you see.
Yeah.
So, meaning that you, as you said, show it, but you don't tell them what they're looking at. Allow them to use their creative mind
Yeah.
to come up with the answers and solutions. And when you can spark the curiosity of a student, again, that's another game changer. I saw this quote. I don't know where I saw it, but it's like, kids are naturally curious. That's why when you're like 2, 3, you're taking a fork and trying to stick it in the socket because you want to just explore the world. Something happens between kindergarten and 12th grade. Curiosity is gone, bro. So
Yeah.
instead of us inspiring this curiosity and getting you to think and think outside, we have almost programmed you to stop thinking outside the box and think within it and correct and circle the right bubble. And now we actually are killing what we actually should be inspiring to happen in the learning space. So yeah, when you said that, it really sparked me to that conversation. We teach you where to look and not tell you what to see. And,
Yeah. Yeah. And so thinking about it from the just like zeroing out a bit and looking at education in that way, I am um about to embark on this 4-week cohort that I'm doing with some
nice,
teachers.
nice.
And I was talking about it and talking about just like traditional professional development, not like the ones you do or the ones I do, but like traditional professional development
Yeah.
and how uh, embedded is this centralized understanding of power.
Mm,
Because as you come in, you sit down, and then the district official, whoever, is going to tell you what you need to do and why you need to do it. And then they're always going to give you advice that best benefits the machine.
mm,
They're never going to come to you and say, yo, this is what you need to be doing for what's best for kids. They might say it occasionally because they know that's what, right? But it's coded because ultimately at the end of the day, you got to keep the machine going.
mhm.
Um, for example, and this leads right into my question.
Yeah.
I was in a professional development, and one of the district officials was leading it, and he said it's important that we talk about and teach basically to the test because 70% of our funding comes from the federal government, and so we got to do well if we, you know what I mean. And so he made it
Correct.
very, very plain.
Correct.
Even though that might not be what's best for my student and how they approach the moment. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
Um,
Man.
so what happens when that is repeated, right? When we are consistently acquiescing what's best for students in place of, right, leaving that to the side for what's best for the machine.
That's tough, man. It's tough because I understand both sides of it.
Yeah.
I understand that as a leader, you're going to be evaluated based off of performance. And
Yep.
I can engage you all I want, and you can love me and say I'm the best teacher ever. But if I can't get you to get the results, that's dollars, and that's my job. And
Yep.
so you always have to run this balance of how do I engage students, but still get the performance, right? And so I totally get it.
Yep.
Um, I all I can say is the great ones do it. They do both, meaning
Yeah.
that if this it goes back to connecting. I know you're like, man, why you keep drilling that? But that's really all I'm about. It's all
Yeah.
about connecting and relationships. I had an opportunity to be a teacher. I had an opportunity to be a general manager. The principal works in both places.
Hmm.
If people believe you have their best interests, they will run through walls for you.
Mm.
And that will happen with employees, and that happens with students. So if I want my student to perform, teaching to the test will not motivate or inspire them to do better with outcomes.
Mm.
Connecting with them, making them feel part of the learning process, will engage them, and we know that will influence outcomes. So my thing is, even though as an administrator you have the pressure, you could never lead that way. Meaning, I
Mhm.
understand it, but you can't lead that way. You still have to be student centered. And for organizations that probably be listening, that's not in education, you have to be employee centered. And once you are with the people and you base all your decisions around those people, that will get them to be more productive. That will get the student to engage more, and that will make the performance go higher. We know that's the truth. Statistics shows us that's true. So that would be my answer. Although I understand what leaders do, I think it's just a bad decision when you lead like that. It's,
Yeah.
it's engaging. No one wants to do it, and it becomes almost like fear and intimidation kind of thing. And then once you do that, it doesn't work in relationships, bro. It just doesn't. So that would be my advice to any educator that's, or especially education leaders that are balancing this act of how do I get them to perform and meet the results. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think it's like, so for me it is, I want and district officials, administrators, and the like to know what, like, don't just tell me to be conscious of what kids are going through. You be
Mhm.
conscious of what kids are going through. So that when you come to the PD and you're trying to train me, you say, not, hey, we need to teach to the test because it's important for us to learn. No, no. This is the reality in which our kids are growing. And this is the system, the way it's been set up. And so for them to be successful and for us to be successful, we both need to do this thing, regardless of how we feel about it,
Mhm.
right? We need to be successful on this exam. So let's set our kids up for success and let's focus that way so that the end result is that, you know what I mean, we are set up for success as well. So we can continue to do this, right? That's a very different pitch than
Yeah.
70% of our funding comes from, right? Because then it's just about your bottom line. And you never once, you know, talked about the importance of what we do. It's because it's about relationships. Like, I'm in the business of people as an educator.
There we go. And we forget that, man. We start making it very number driven. Another slogan that you'll always hear me say: stop making education transactional.
Yes,
Make
sir.
it relational. It can't be like you just did a register transaction. I gave you the information, I spit it back on the test. We all went, yeah. It can't be that, bro. Um, I when I do these professional developments, I usually ask the teachers, um, can you go around your room and tell me three things about your students' lives that has nothing to do with the classroom? They're
Hmm.
like, no. Well, why would we need to do that? That would mean way more to them and to you and to productivity, because that will show that you care. And
Hmm.
if you tell Johnny, and maybe you don't agree with this approach, but I believe in being transparent.
Hmm.
I tell the students, bro, if you guys don't perform on this put Dr. Tank in a tough spot, man. I need y'all to give me our best. We got you, Dr. Tank. We got you. We got
Oh,
you
that's
know
me all the way.
what? But you get my point, because I
Absolutely.
penetrated the heart. So now it's like just like a team. When you feel like the coach is a player's coach, bro, I'm practicing whether you tell me not to. I'm going hard. And I think we forget that this is a people business, like you said. If you get the people on your team, they will go all out for you. And that is even with performing on tests, standardized tests, whatever you're talking about in school. But if you approach it like it's a people centered um, industry, which it really is, and you focus on relationships and relations, stop making it so transactional, you'll get the movement. It comes with it. It's part of the process. So that's really my outlook on education. And
So
last thing I'm going to talk about that's a little innovative. Maybe someone in your listeners can try this. If you look at a classroom from 1800s and
mhm,
look at a classroom in 2022, it
mhm,
physically looks the same, bro. Um, the teachers up in the front. In the 1800s, yes, we had some kind of chalkboard up there, and the students sat in these desks. You mean to tell me nothing changed in 200 years? and you still want them to be engaged off of a 200-year-old system. So one of the things I'm trying now, the students love it. Get rid of the chair. I do it in professional developments too. Get rid of the chairs. We're gonna sit in a circle. And in Africa and a lot of indigenous people, that's how we learn. We learned in circles, bro. When we came
Absolutely.
around the room, now we're all on the same level. It feels very, it's transformative, bro. It's a different way to learn. People learn. You're like, yo, I like this. And you're no longer this authoritarian standing in the front of the classroom no more. And you become one of them. And now knowledge becomes more cyclical. So it's like a circle of knowledge. Bro, it's powerful. And I find that a lot of my teachers love learning this way. Let's try a little different. Let's try it in school. Heck, I'll go even back to kindergarten. Do you remember sometimes that's how we learned in kindergarten, bro? And we left that and we go in these cubicles like we're at a corporate office. And that's how we're trying to engage our students 200 years later.
Yeah, man. Um, I think about how, like you said, this 200-year-old system
Mm-hmm.
that has not changed, that has not developed, has not grown, even though our students are changing, growing, in the world that they live in is different, right? I'm a huge proponent of circles. Huge proponent.
Yeah, man.
I'm, you know, I want, and even if people feel like because of, like COVID kind of did a number on it in
Oh
terms
yeah.
of just like the functionality of it, but um, even like classroom meetings,
Mm,
like making them, you know, a space where kids know like your knowledge and expertise isn't just going to be on what you can do with numbers in my class because a math teacher, right? Like I'm going to value your voice in a bunch of different things. I'm going to tell
nice.
you a story about what's happening in my family and ask you what's happening. I'm going to, like, we're going to do all of those things.
Beautiful, man.
And like you said, the circle is a transformative space because, like you
Mhm.
said, we are all peers. We are all,
Yeah.
it's this distribution of power that works so lovely
Yes.
for
Yeah.
empowering, folks to be able to share and to be able to take space, right? And that's what I want for my students. I want you to take space in this world,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
And it's very collaborative too, man. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Yeah.
yeah, 100%, 100%.
And I learned that going back to the school to prison pipeline. I learned that from my teaching ex offenders, and I'm like, I because in my experience when I'm dealing with ex offenders, a lot of them hate school, bro. Like
Mm,
I would say 85 to 90% of the individuals I work with did not finish high school. And when you
mm,
ask them why, they just hate school. School wasn't for them. I don't like it. And I'm like, bro, I don't think that's the answer. I think we failed you at school. I don't think you hate learning. You probably hate the institution of school, but I think you like to learn. We just didn't learn. We didn't know how to teach you. So give me a chance to show you a different way to learn. Let me find out your learning style. They're like, what you mean my learning style? I said, there's a way that you would be very successful in learning, and we failed to even consider that when we taught you in kindergarten or first grade. And so
mm,
I'm going to first go around the room, find out the way you learn. I'm going
mhm.
to adjust to that style. And they're just like, what? And I found when I stood in front of them, it felt too much like school. So then that's when I moved to the approach of the circle. And I seen light bulbs, eyes popping open. I'm like, all right, this is working. And I'm like, man, if I'm doing this in the ex offender space, let me bring this over to the classroom space. It's the same thing. And I found that my students liked it as well. So it birthed out of engaging with the ex offenders that I learned this strategy is very effective in learning.
Yeah, I mean, you went exactly where I want to go in talking about your program with ex offenders
Yeah.
and just the carceral state we of things. I talk to us, for those who maybe have a stereotypical understanding
Hmm.
of what an ex offender is like, who they
Yeah.
are. Like, talk to us about like just some of the stories and things that have happened as you've kind of walked in this space.
Yeah. So I'm gonna first talk to any educator that's listening.
Yeah.
Be like, how did you get in this space? um, I'm just like everyone else. In my head, when I became an education consultant, my thinking was I was going to go to schools, teach teachers how to teach. I was going to do professional development and school leaders and transform curriculum. That's really what I went into this space to do. I know you follow me, so you see that I do videos all the time. Someone saw my video and hit me in the DM on Instagram. Was like, "Yo, man, I know you're an educator, but would you consider just speaking to some guys that got caught up in the system?" And I'm just like, well, never really had a desire to do that, but I'll try it. And I went because I probably had some of those stereotypical thoughts, like, man, these guys are scary, and they're just like us. They're just like, it's just like, the difference between us and them. We didn't get caught.
My
That's it.
mind. My
Because
mind.
if I broke down every story of everyone that's here, you did something that could have got you messed up at one point in your life.
Yeah.
These guys got caught. And I tell them, so don't look at you as you just this reject and all these people are perfect out there. You got caught, but what do you do now that you got caught? Right.
Mm.
So what I now do for them is I'm doing for them what I'm doing for schools, literally. It's the same concept. With schools, I feel like the biggest problem with schools is that we have this one track way to be successful, and we don't consider all the other pathways that kids should be offered. And I'm still with you. I just wanted to kind of explain what I'm doing here. So,
Please.
with schools, I feel like it's college or nothing. And the message that my company is bringing to schools is college is one pathway, military is another pathway, entrepreneurship is another pathway, and
Mm-hmm.
trade is another pathway. There's more, but that's what my company focuses on. We focus on the four. I believe that high schools and middle schools should be talking about those four pathways and let the student identify which pathway they want to take, so they don't think if I'm not college material, I don't have no other thing but to go in the streets and hustle. So
Yeah.
with those who come out of jail, I do the same exact thing.
Yeah.
I tell them, bro, it's not only college. You can do trade.
Mm.
It's not too late. No, it's not too late, bro. You can do trade. What? Um, Most of y'all in here are entrepreneurs. They're like, nah, not me. Most of y'all were hustling. Yeah, we were hustling. You're entrepreneurs. You were doing it illegally. I'm going to show you how to get an LLC so you can take that same hustle that you had, but legalize it and get a legal hustle. Sell t-shirts. Go make some shirts, put some slogans on it, and hustle it the same way you were hustling. They're like, what? Military is
Mm.
out the door for some of you, right? But I think entrepreneurial trade is a viable option for some of them. I tell them even college is a pathway for you.
Yeah.
And I'll end on this. Um, if you have your GED, you can go to college. If you don't have your GED, let's go to ABE route, adult basic education. Get that under the thing, go to GED, and then we're gonna go to college. How am I going to go to college? Community college accepts everyone, including those with a GED. You go into community college. Once you get your foot in the door, you understand how college works. You transfer to a 4 year, you get your degree. That's kind of what we do. And so if I can put it in a nutshell, what we're doing, we're giving people hope. We're showing you that there's multiple ways to be successful. No matter the story, there's a way out. And I think if you give anyone viable options like that, success is going to happen. I think most people that fail, they don't know no other way. And I
Mm.
think a lot of our community just think it's one way to success. And that's really what the story we're trying to bring to the schools as well as the prisons.
I think that's huge because like you said, most of our understandings are our typical understandings of success all
Mm-hmm.
have to do with how one has gone to college,
Yep.
right? Then they come back and then they and mind you, I think about just like my like Liberation Lab actually being an official business doesn't happen without like us learning
Mm-hmm.
as a family
Mm-hmm.
about entrepreneurship
Yeah.
via the pandemic and all these different things that we were like, you know what, we gotta change up how we're doing things
That's
because
right.
you know what I mean. And so, um, I I I love hearing what you're doing because when you look at what the carceral state has done to black men,
Come on, man.
the increasing numbers in black women that doesn't often get talked about,
Yes.
um, the the black family,
Come on.
right?
You're speaking my
Um,
language now, brother.
it has wreaked havoc. Talk to us a little about that, and then if you could just switch gears for us, take us inside,
Mhm,
uh, like a day in the life, if you will, of
mhm.
what you're doing, and just any stories you have that will help cue us in on just like you said, you're in the business of people, so take us there.
Yeah. So look, man, I don't even know if you could box me in into as to what I do.
Hmm.
I'm just like wherever the need is, I'm going there. All right. And
Mhm.
when you look at our communities, there's a huge need for us to help black men.
Yeah.
You can't build families. I know what the world is saying right now in 2022, but I'm telling you, you need our men home to build families. Yes, I'm not going against the whole other movement there, but I'm just saying there's a critically important thing when the dad's in the house.
Mhm.
And if we cannot really be talking about healing the community, changing outcomes, and we're missing a big component, and we're not talking about it. And so when I when I really wanted to make change in the community, I knew I had to do something with our men. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, a disproportionate of them, a lot of them are in prison, halfway houses, or on their way there. So I had to go into space, man. And um, I've heard some traumatic stories, bro.
Hmm.
Traumatic stories. I'll give you one right now. Dude did 25 years in prison. He's fairly young. Comes out and he's in my program,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, "Yo, man, like, how did you get here?" He said, "Man, I didn't even want to be here. My life, my parents made me come here." I'm like, "How your parents make you go to prison?" He said, "Tank, I had some really messed up parents. My dad and mom were strung out on drugs, and they used to make me take it with them, or I got a whooping." I'm like, "Wait a minute, say that again." I was 8 years old, and I was forced to take drugs with my parents, or I would get a whipping if I chose not to. So by the age of 10, I was addicted to heroin. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. So by 11, dropped out of school. 12, 13, I started selling it. Got caught up in juvenile by 14. Been in the system ever since. By the time I was 18, 19, it got bigger. Boom. So I hear what you're saying, Tank, but some of us didn't really have a chance, bro. Like I didn't pick my parents. Like this is the situation I was born in. I couldn't come out.
Wow.
As he finished with me, like so I do an 8-week program. Um, I got him. He was out for about like 2 years by the time he got into my program. He said, "I'm the first man in his life, first grown man in his life who said I believe in you."
Hmm.
And I'm just thinking, all right, nothing big about that. He wrote me a letter about a year ago. He's like, "I'm the general manager of Domino's Pizza." He said, "I thought my life was over. And because you believe, even though I had all this crap since I was 8 years old, you looked at me in the eye and told me you believe in me. I swear to you, that actually made me believe in myself. And
Wow.
now I can do anything." And now this dude is running Domino's. I know to the
Wow.
average listener, that's like, so what? That's not a big. That's a
No, sir. That's
major deal, bro.
huge. Yeah.
Because this dude, some jobs don't even give you a chance to be a cashier. He's running the joint.
Yeah.
And so I think of him a lot when I get tired in this work, when I start getting a little discouraged. It, you know, for me, that's not a success story. He's going to have kids. So now that becomes a generational success story. You know what I'm saying? So my thing is, I'm not just helping individuals. I'm trying to help families. I'm helping the future. And as many lives that I can touch, both the youngsters before they get caught up and the ones that are in there, I think that's really making the changes in the community that we need to see. So that's really the beauty of what I'm doing with the school to prison pipeline.
Yeah.
We're allowing people to dream again, bro. And it's whether it's in school or you got caught up. We're
That
giving you a chance to dream again, man.
that that sentence itself is paramount to liberation. I think in any space, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about it on Sunday. Just like I was talking about just like trash professional development, but I was talking about like what we do to our kids as well in schools, and it's like it's this mind numbing
Mm.
um requirement to be seated silent with pencils moving that we deem as learning, and it's lifeless. When I'm having an engaging conversation with folks who are challenging my thinking, and I'm like, oh, that made me think about this, and you say something, I'm like, yes, because I'm responding. There's passion, there's joy, there's interconnectedness, and we're vibing now because we're both learning and growing, and
Correct.
yet that type of understanding of learning is not only frowned upon but will get you pushed out.
You ain't lying, bro. Yeah, you ain't lying. But bro, come on, man. I think you heard me say this on Instagram before.
Yeah.
Find me any space that we are the dominant group in, that it's not engaging. Find me a black church that we sit and we don't respond back to the preacher. We sit stale, we don't move. No, it doesn't happen. We're
Does not
talking,
happen.
we're moving, we're dancing. Some of you are running laps. All right, but we are engaged. Go to a barbershop. It's expressive. What? Why do we think we could put a bunch of our kids in these cold, quiet spaces and think they will perform? We don't do nothing culturally like that.
Right.
So education has to make an adjustment. That's what real culturally relevant pedagogy should look like.
Yes, sir.
There's no accident why I call myself Dr. Tank. People like, you know how many people ask me like, bro, how you putting your street name out like that? I do it intentionally. Once I walk into a room full of ex-offenders, I say I'm Dr. Tank. They laugh. They're like, oh, is that? All I did is put the DR in front of my name, guys. I'm still the same dude from Elizabeth, New Jersey. I do that intentionally. That's the culturally relevant thing that I'm doing, even with my name, to say that, bro, I did not forget. I'm still
Yeah.
Pookie. I still understand how this thing roll, but let's get this information at the same time, right?
Mm.
And I think once you show that it goes back to our beginning of our concept. Once you show you're real, you're transparent, you're authentic, you're expressive. Shoot, I start my joints with Meek Mill playing. Like I know the culture. I know
Yeah.
how to connect, and once you can connect, game over. Learning's gonna happen.
It is a commitment to not only learn
Mm-hmm.
from it is the position of being a student of your students,
Ah,
right?
right. Yeah.
I I want to learn
Mm-hmm.
where their expertise flourishes. I want to
Yes.
hear them in conversation with each other, right?
Yes.
I We can disagree with how they interact, we can disagree with how they communicate, what they communicate, but I want to know what they're communicating about,
That's right.
right? I want to know what makes them tick. So when the student
That's right.
comes into my classroom and they're talking about comic books or they're talking about games, why do you
Mm-hmm.
like that game? Talk to
Yep.
me about it, right?
Yep.
Because in that space, if you could talk to me about, why you like this particular hero, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why you like this particular game,
Mm-hmm.
I can take that thing, flip it, and make it a math lesson.
Exactly. Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
I had a student come into my classroom last week, and he brought in a breakfast hoagie from the bodega down the street.
Hmm.
So like I teach pretty much from first through um like the sixth block, right? Or
Okay.
I teach three classes back to back to
Hmm.
back, right? So first through sixth period.
Hmm.
And um he comes in with the breakfast hoagie in homeroom, and he's eating it.
Hmm.
And then like obviously like several students are like, yo, pass me a little bit, please, right?
Uh-huh.
And he says, this is why I got the hoagie, because I knew y'all was gonna ask me for something and I wouldn't have enough for
Mm.
myself.
Wow.
And in that moment, I was like, okay, so wait, you're telling me that you came here with the hoagie because you knew what was going to happen once you got here. So you planned in advance. Let's talk about it.
Mm.
I had a whole lesson plan on percent error and all this other stuff. I threw that stuff out the window and we talked about this hoagie. And I said, okay, what do you think? What percentage, how much of your hoagie do you
Mhm.
think you have now as a result? And we were
Oh,
talking
come
about
on, man.
how
You're teaching good now, bro.
when I tell you every single one of them was hooked,
Yeah.
I mean, kids that I never saw engaged. I was like, okay, so wait, you had a 12-inch hoagie.
Hmm.
You think you got about 7 now.
Hmm.
What's the percent decrease of that? Let's talk about
Mm. Mm.
it. And now they're like, oh, okay, hold on, wait. So you telling me I had 12, and they're doing it. They're putting in their calculators. They're talking to me. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, so when we took the 12 and we minus the 7, that's five out of 12. And then they start dividing it. It's real close to 50%. He almost got half of it taken. Yeah.
There we go.
Absolutely, he almost got half of it taken. Now, what do you think happens if he brought a 6-inch
Hmm.
and the same thing happens, right? And we're using something as simple as the hoagie, where
Come on.
and in that moment, he is engaged. He
Yep.
knows that I see him.
Yep.
He knows that I affirmed the fact that he came into classroom prepared to help somebody else. I made a big deal out of that,
Yep.
right? But if I'm trained to have my highest ethic as control, then when he opens up the hoagie, immediately I'm shutting it down.
Yep.
And I think about that kid over and over and over again, because what winds up happening is children like that who will come in and may not necessarily color in between the lines
Yeah.
will ostracize, put out, and then they go meet Dr. Tank, regrettably, on the other side of things,
Yes, sir.
because now we're the fulfillment of what the Frederick Douglass quote, right?
Hmm.
It's easier to you know
Repair.
to yeah, it's harder to repair broken men.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. It's
Um,
easier to build children than to repair broken men. Something to that
there it
effect.
is. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Build children and to repair broken men. How so talk to me in
Hmm.
that. Talk to me about the repair work. What do our formerly incarcerated brothers need? What is that deep work, that the healing work that's necessary for them?
Well, one of the things that I try my best to help them with is that they have to not see counseling as a bad thing, right? Um, we
100%.
talk about SEL. I think a lot of them are not in touch with their emotional side, right? And so one of the things that I work with them for a week, 2 sessions, is self awareness. We do a lot of work with mental health, taking care of yourself, saying I need help. That's a hard thing for a lot of us to say, including myself. And so I think what they need is really a lot of services. But if I could say something that's practical that your listeners can probably do, um, forgiveness.
Mm,
I, I think a lot of them, when they come back home, there's a lot of bitterness
mm,
that they deal with, and some is justified. Like, bro,
mhm.
you left when I was 3 months. Now I'm 17 years old. What you want to tell me now? You weren't there, and they struggle with a lot of them struggle with that. Um, or you're just gonna get locked up again. Like, and so I think they deal with the community is not open arms to them when they come back, right?
Mm.
A lot of their friends are dead. Because I'm not dealing with jail, I'm dealing with prison. For your listeners, jail is 1 year. Prison is when you do more than 1 year. So I'm dealing with 15, 20, 25 years. So by the time you come back home, a lot has changed. And so I
Yeah.
think if I can, it goes back to the slogan that I'm really trying to do: forgive them and help them dream again. And what
Mm.
I mean by dream again, show them pathways that are realistic that they can get their life back together. And so I don't believe in theories. I believe in practical things that I can give you a checklist. And so one of the things that got me the contract with the state of New Jersey is everybody's going to give you theories. Everybody's going to tell you how their program works, right? I'm going to give these individuals a physical GPS, a map that this is what you do when you come out. So when the program's over, they still have the information. They still know when to
Yes.
turn left and know when to turn right, and they will always have my information to contact me. And I think whenever you can give students as well as these individuals a tangible plan on how to get to their success, the outcomes will happen automatically in my estimation. So that's what makes us different. That's what I believe they need. They need plans. Too many people are coming out of prison with zero plan. And
Yeah.
when you don't have a plan, you run. And I'll yield on this point here. Tell me anyone that gets in a car that says you're trying to get to a destination that don't put nothing in the GPS. If you don't, you start driving in circles and then you run and get lost. No one should be leaving prison without a tangible GPS plan to whatever they're trying to do. If you're trying to be an electrician, we should have schools that are in their community that's teaching that kind of trade so they know exactly where to go, how to get it funded before they step foot out of that prison door. Because if we do not do that, we're setting them up to go back. And that's why the recidivism rate is 67%. And so I'll yield there.
Mm. Um, Powerful, especially because, like you said, man, it is. If my mind is free,
Hmm.
if my mind is able to dream,
Yes, sir.
then the present state of my body doesn't hold as much weight anymore.
Come on, man. You sound like Malcolm X, brother. Yes, sir. You're correct.
And he's actually on my wall right here, one of my heroes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, what you
Yeah.
also said made me think of this book, Letters to the Sons of
Hmm.
Society.
Come on. Yes, sir.
Um, that in it, Shaka talks about
Mm-hmm.
writing to his sons, right? And he has two boys, and the younger of them, he talks about this aspect of playing basketball in the driveway.
Mm-hmm.
And but like leading up to it, he was they got a puppy. The puppy, had an accident in the cage, and he takes the cage outside to wash it down, and he's making noise outside in LA at like 2 in the morning. And
Mm-hmm.
he's like, it's amazing how something as simple as me cleaning off this cage will make
Mm.
me fear for my life because I'm a black man outside at 2 a.m. in the morning.
Oh my God. And that's real.
And real, right? And yeah, so I commend it to anybody who's listening and pick up that book. It really does give you like, it humanizes the experience. And I think that's what we forget too is that our brothers and sisters who are formerly incarcerated, who are presently incarcerated, they're still humans, right? They're
Yeah.
people. Um,
I'm
and
saying
please,
so I don't call them ex-offenders because I think that dehumanizes them there too.
mm,
These are individuals. I call them by their name. I don't call them ex-offenders because I think once you do that, you then engage in that process of making them a scary thing, and we forget that they're people. Joe, John have feelings, cry, and so what they did does not define them. We call that in sociology a master status, where what you do actually defines you in totality, and that's not who they are. They're individuals that made a mistake, and our goal is to get them back on track. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Tank, for our listeners um, who want to know how to tap into what you're doing, maybe support or just be connected with you, where could they find you? What could they do? How could they support?
All right. Well, you can find me on all major platforms. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all at Tank Educates, TANK EdDucates. I'm also on YouTube, Dr. Tank. And then finally on my website, www.tankeducates.com. Um, as Malcolm X once said, if your goal is to help our people, I don't care if you're Christian, Muslim, atheist, we about that work. Let's collaborate and let's get this thing going because I'm trying to help our communities. I don't care what setting it is, whether it's prison or in the schoolhouse. I'm willing to go there and serve the people. And I actually want to end on that. We are working on, by the end of this year, I will be teaching college courses inside the prison. So no longer will I wait for them to come out of prison to help them. I'm going behind the wall to teach them credit-based classes where they will actually get a bachelor's degree when it's all done. So that's the
Beautiful.
part we're working on by the end of this year.
That's great. That's great, man. I love hearing it.
Mhm.
As someone with your breadth of experience, I think
Mhm.
this last question that I ask is will be a phenomenal one, and that is, if you had three wishes where that would move liberation forward, anything that you wanted, what do you think it would take? Three wishes.
I hate the fact that this word is becoming like a slogan,
Yeah,
but I really want schools to be culturally responsive.
it is a slogan. Yeah.
Yeah, and I hate that it's a slogan, but I'm going to tell you why it's so important.
Hmm.
Um, Schools force you to learn about Abraham Lincoln and George Washington and the French Revolution and all these things that white people have won at. And what happens at the end of 12 years of that, you gain white cultural pride. Uh, that's why you think they're smart. That's why you think they're great. They're the dominant group, and you think so less of yourself. Because when it comes to our history and our culture, it's dismissed and ignored. And so what happens now, you don't have cultural pride and you put them at high. That's why, if I want to go really deep with this, that's why no one's seen God, but yet God is even white. So what they were in essence able to do through white supremacy is get you to see them high and see yourself low. And I
Absolutely.
believe that's what's affecting us with education because it's ingrained in it. So my hope is that education truly becomes culturally responsive so we can see everyone in the classroom. And I think once you see that, that will connect our students better. So that's one of my wishes.
Yeah.
Uh, my second wish really is very close to the first wish. I want the curriculums changed. I want every student to be mandated to learn Black history. And for those who say it's impossible, it just got passed where I live. And I've been fighting this fight for about 12 years, but in Cherry Hill, it is now mandated that every single student has to take Black history, real Black history, not LeBron James and Michael Jordan history. We're talking about
Yeah.
real history that shaped what we call African American experience today. So I
Hmm.
would like to see that rolled out everywhere.
Everywhere. Hmm.
And then finally, um, this ties into the work that I do. I believe schools, I have the opportunity to sit on the board of directors in Camden, and I'm already working on it that we are now putting life skills inside the curriculum as young as sixth grade. And so by the time, if you start learning about trade, military, college, uh, and entrepreneurship by sixth grade, By the time you get to 12th grade, you'll have an idea of which pathway you would want to take. And so I'm preaching that we diversify the message and start teaching a lot of life skills and trade very early, so kids who do not want to go to college track can still be successful in these other three pathways. And I think if we preach that also in schools very early, a lot of kids who think school is not for them will now see school is for them, and a lot of students will be successful that way. And so those would be my three wishes.
Oh man, I think all of that is just phenomenal. I wholeheartedly agree with what you said about cultural responsiveness. When I go into schools and talk about it,
Mhm.
they're like, "Oh yeah, I know," and I'm like,
Yeah,
"I you don't know what you
yeah.
no."
We talk deeper than that, brother.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. Uh, man, it's an honor always to share space with you. Um,
appreciate you. Same regards, man. Same sentiments.
and I love the work that you're doing because, like you said, man, it's the reclaiming of dreaming, um, of liberation,
Mhm.
and what it means for Black bodies everywhere,
Yeah,
is great, man. So thank you, thank you for your work, and thank you for what it means wholeheartedly to just all the work that people like you and myself are doing. So um,
appreciate you, brother.
and so I'll make sure we put all that stuff in the show notes so people can connect with you.
Yeah.
And thank you again for sharing Space King. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Listen, the honor's all mine. And to all your listeners, I'll end with my slogan: dream with your eyes open. And I'll end right there, brother.
No better way to end. Listen, y'all, thank y'all for tapping in. This is, again, the Lab platform where we advance liberation one conversation at a time. This has been my guest, Dr. Tank,
Yes, sir.
and signing off. Until next time. Peace.